Welcome back. This time we're talking about Star Wars The Last Jedi. And this time we're going full spoilers. You can check out my spoiler-free review. It is online now. And if you have not seen the movie, I recommend you stopping this video and checking that one out. But if you have seen Star Wars The Last Jedi and want to hear my deeper and more specific thoughts on what we got in this movie, this is the video for you. So I expect to have a lot to say about this movie because there was a lot in it, and let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to try to stay more or less chronological as things happen in the movie. Obviously, some things are going to get grouped together that happen later in the film, and that's just how this is going to work. But I'm going to try to have some logical way of how this is going to go. If you've seen my spoiler-free review, you know I was not a huge fan of this film. I was also not a huge fan of The Force Awakens. I felt both films had some serious story problems. But I'm not going to just talk about the things I didn't like, because there are things I did like in this film. First of all, it looks wonderful. I really liked Rian Johnson's directing in this. I like the action sequences. He went in some directions that we're not used to seeing in Star Wars films. And I thought they were quite successful in most instances. My complaints are almost entirely with the story. This film is the first Star Wars film to pick up immediately after the end of the previous film. With Rey and Luke on his hidden planet, Octu, and the First Order sending its forces out to destroy the hidden resistance base, which they learned about near the end of the previous film, right before Starkiller Base was destroyed. And this film picks up, we get the crawl. I don't care. Even with the prequels, which are not great films, The Crawl is always, the music, everything is just quintessential Star Wars. I loved it. It pans down. We get to see the planet where the Resistance base is, and they're fleeing. They're escaping. The First Order arrive. Their Star Destroyers are there, and then we get to see this huge dreadnought. And Poe leads this battle, defying Leia's orders, and attacks this dreadnought. And this battle, while pretty cool, made me very worried for this film. There was a number of instances in this battle that just took me out of the movie. It's like, wait, what? First off, the bombers. The bombers, honestly, they looked stupid. They were slow. We've had bombers in Star Wars before. They're Y-Wings. They drop bombs. They've gone on bombing runs. We've seen that in multiple movies at this point. Why we needed these weird bombers that are insanely overpowered. I mean, they were up against a dreadnought, which, listening to the radio play during this battle, you would think they've never taken one on and won before. And it took one bomber and one payload of an insane number of bombs to win. It took out the whole ship. Why are the dreadnoughts that scary if one bomber can take out an entire ship? They were just ridiculously overpowered ships that were made up for the fact that they were ridiculously slow. Nothing about them made sense to me, and it really just pulled me out of the film very, very early on. This is also where we meet Rose's sister, although at the time we don't know she's Rose's sister. We just know she's some random woman in the Resistance who dies, but before so clutches this medallion. I was honestly really worried that she was some character from the greater Star Wars universe, and they'd thrown her in, and like I said, I had a lot of worries coming out of this battle. Another thing, and these could be considered nitpicks, but considering it's the first scene, this is kind of what set my mood moving forward. And a lot of some of these concerns were allayed, but it was not a great start for me. The other, to get back to my point, the other problem I had was, why can't the capital ship leave Poe's ship? Why does he have to get onto the ship to fly away? We know X-Wings can travel at light speed. It happened in the last movie. It's happened in pretty much every movie, every Star Wars movie. I really didn't get that either. I mean, it's like, oh, if Poe doesn't come back, we can't leave. What? No. I don't know. So anyway, that was that first battle. It looked cool, but I just did not like the bombers. This did not work for me at all. And so, like I said, it was not a great opening act for me. We do get to see Finn wake up. That was funny. The comic relief didn't always hit, but it worked. They used him asking about Rey to segue us back to Octu, kind of picking up with Rey trying to give Luke the lightsaber, and he just kind of tosses it over his shoulder. I thought that was a little odd, even as we learn how much he doesn't want to be a Jedi anymore. It was funny, but it didn't quite fit his character, but I'll let that slide. But I do have to say, the whole Rey, Luke, and even the Kylo Ren, because he was able to be part of this as well through their visions with each other. My favorite part of the movie. Pretty much everything that had happened on Octu, I liked. I have some quibbles about Luke's character, but I'll get to that in a minute. But I really liked everything that dynamic with Luke, the reluctant teacher, Rey continuing to push the issue, being persistent. Ultimately, we learn more about what happened with Luke and Kylo Ren. I was really kind of worried that they were going to make Luke the bad guy, that he really did try to kill Ben, and it turns out that he had a moment of weakness, and Ben was there for that moment of weakness, and he basically facilitated the fulfillment of his turn. I wish we would have gotten more into Ben's actual turn into Kylo Ren. Luke does mention that Snoke was an influence, but the darkness was already there. I mean, we had an entire prequel trilogy to try to tell the story of the turn of Anakin Skywalker. Essentially, Ben is the last Skywalker alive now, going into Episode 9, with the death of Carrie Fisher, so Leia will not be able to continue forward. He is the continuation of the Skywalker saga. He is the Skywalker saga. So I would have liked to have learned more about his turn, and that's going to be a common theme. What we learned, I wasn't always happy with, and what we didn't learn greatly still kind of outnumbered what we did learn. My one issue with Luke's story is that he made a mistake. He kind of facilitated the creation of Kylo Ren, and his guilt over that, and his guilt of his weakness, was very well done, very well told. Mark Hamill was great as this broken Luke. The problem is yes, he made a mistake and he decided to hide away so he doesn't make any more mistakes. But he's essentially letting the world burn around him because of his mistake and his unwillingness to face that mistake. And it's a character flaw. I mean, and our characters are not always perfect, but the reluctant hero is not a favorite archetype of mine. So I found it a little annoying, especially as he continues and continues and continues to refuse to do what he needs to do, and ultimately he does, and it's awesome. But I can't help thinking, man, if he had just done this a few years ago, billions of people would still be alive. And that again will be a common theme where our characters make decisions in this movie that make things a lot worse. And maybe with the exception of Rey, no one leaves this film better off as far as a character goes than they started. Rey definitely improves, has an arc, but a lot of the others make decisions that I don't really like, and it hurts their characters overall. But again, I will be getting to that. Now, if you saw my spoiler-free review, I talked about how in the middle act of this film, there's an entire section that could have been cut completely. And that, of course, is the Poe, Finn, Rose. Pretty much anything to do with them in this movie could have been cut. I didn't like anything to do with this storyline. As the rebels leave, are able to escape their planet after the dreadnought is destroyed. Somehow, the First Order is able to track them through hyperspace. Complete surprise to anyone and everyone except for Rose, who somehow seems to know about this technology to the point that she could point Finn in the right direction. Yeah, let's just move on. They attack. Kylo Ren hesitates to fire on Leia in the bridge. I thought that was a great character moment for him. But then the bridge is blown out anyway, and Leia's gone. I'm like, oh my god, they killed her in the first act. Obviously, we know that Carrie Fisher has passed away. We know that Leia's time in the saga is limited. That took me by surprise. And then she uses the Force and survives. Okay, that was cool. We've wanted to see Leia use the Force in a film. If you know of the original book series, which is now called Legends, she had some Force. She used the Force. It's something we've always wanted to see. So we got to see that. The problem with that scene is they killed Admiral Akbar, and we didn't even know it until we find out later, like, Admiral Akbar died. Like, I mean, seriously? You kill an insanely popular Star Wars character more or less off screen. Did not work for me. Was not a happy Star Wars fan. Moving on. So, the new Admiral takes over. I forget her name, to be honest. But she's kind of a jerk, or at least we think she's a jerk. Poe doesn't like her plan. Her plan does seem to be pretty stupid. So Poe, Finn, and Rose concoct this plan. And this is where we get to the Mahjong portion of this plot. And I say that because playing Mahjong, a lot of times you need a piece, but to get to that piece you need this piece, and to get that piece you need to remove this piece, and so on and so forth. And that was essentially this whole middle act. They need to get onto the super dreadnought and shut down the tracker. But to do that, they have to get through the shields. To get through the shields, they need a code breaker. To get a code breaker, they have to fly away to some casino planet and find this code breaker, which then revolves into a chase and a prison break and meeting another new character and what? Basically everything that happened on the casino planet I didn't like. It was boring, and I mean they kind of call back to it in the end, but there was other ways they could have made callbacks. Totally pointless. And the whole sublight chase, maybe I don't know Star Wars physics well enough, and I probably don't, but why couldn't the First Order just like go to light speed for like a fraction of a second and come out on the other side of them? And I mean, are we seriously just having a slow speed chase through space for a very large portion of this movie? I mean, I really had a hard time not rolling my eyes every time they went back to it. I'm like, we'd be on Octo and cool things are happening, and then we go back to the chase. I'm like, oh yeah, that's still happening. And then the whole timer, we're going to run out of fuel. And we're almost going to run out of fuel. And we're still almost about to run out of fuel. So anyway, all of that plays out. And Finn and Rose get on to the Dreadnought and are captured. Poe leads his mutiny before being taken out by Leia. And essentially, those three characters pretty much get 2/3 to 3/4 of the remaining Resistance soldiers killed. Because the Admiral's plan was working. Until the Codebreaker tells Hux and the rest of them about the cloaked ships fleeing away to the planet Crate. And so, yeah, our three heroes in this film basically make really bad decisions and get a lot of good people killed. It's hard to really look at those characters the same way anymore. It kind of ruins them in some ways for me. Because, yeah, they made bad decisions and got a lot of people killed. There's no way to get around that. Now the Admiral keeping her plan a secret is just as dumb. Pretty much everyone in this entire arc does dumb things and gets people killed. I didn't like it. And I would have been very happy if they just cut that entire sequence out. It would have probably saved the film a half hour. It would have been a lean 2 hours. And it wouldn't have been pretty stupid. It's harsh, but I did not like this sequence at all. I didn't like the character decisions, and like I said, I really think that the First Order could have found a way to catch up to the ship. Call in another ship to come into hyperspace right in front of them. I mean, we've seen them do that at the planet. How hard can it really be? Just didn't work for me. But we do get to see on Octo Rey and Kylo Ren bonding. I enjoyed these sequences. It was compelling storytelling and good acting on both their parts. And there's just enough clues to, in retrospect, let us see that Snoke was actually pulling all of these strings, which is revealed when Rey steals aboard the Super Dreadnought and is captured and taken prisoner by Kylo Ren and taken to Snoke. And then we have this whole confrontation in his throne room, which again is, for the most part, really, really cool. I liked that Kylo Ren almost turned. He turned against Snoke. I love the lightsaber battle with the guards. The problem is Snoke is dead. And he never became an interesting character. And this is one of my biggest problems with The Last Jedi. And not all of it is its fault, but the problem with The Force Awakens is it was not a complete film. Unlike, say, Empire Strikes Back, which did end on a cliffhanger, told a complete story. It was the rebels trying to survive, and they do that. The Force Awakens, we are given a mysterious character in Rey. It's made very clear that her parentage is a mystery that is important. We are told that there is a new supreme leader in this Snoke character who was able to corrupt the son of Han Solo and Leia. And we're going to find out more about him in the next movie because we don't get any information about him. We haven't actually seen him. He's a hologram. So many things The Force Awakens put off, did not tell us. We still don't know, for the most part, the scope, scale, ideals of the First Order. We don't know much of anything about the First Order. Now, in the original Star Wars, we didn't know a whole lot about the Empire, but we didn't really need to. The opening crawl told us everything we needed to know. Evil Empire, good rebels, hence, go forth, have a movie. The problem is The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi is not creating a new story. It is continuing a story. The story that had an end that we know about. Then there's 30 years in between. And we're dropped in this 30-year future time period not knowing much of anything. We know the status quo of 30 years ago. And we've not been told much of anything about this new time period. And Snoke dying, it's like, okay, why was he important in The Force Awakens? If you're just going to kill him off halfway through this movie. Bold storytelling choice. A lot of things I can say in this film are bold storytelling choices. But the problem is this film is not its own being. It can tell its own story. And it does a pretty good job telling its story. The problem is it's part 2 of a new trilogy. And it is not fulfilling the promises laid upon it by The Force Awakens. So Snoke, boom, gone. We don't know anything. Apparently he wasn't important. Leia's parentage. They made a huge deal about it in The Force Awakens. They made a big deal about it in this movie as well. We find out, if we are to believe Kylo Ren's proclamation, that her parents were nobodies. They were traders, junk dealers that sold her off for something in return. Again, bold story choice. Not everyone has to be a Skywalker. The problem is how do you deliver that particular bold story choice? What you don't do is you don't have a film that makes a really big deal about the mystery of her parents, then make fans wait 2 years to watch a movie that spends an hour and 45 minutes or so, once again, making a big deal about her parentage, only for it to be they're nobodies. You gotta know the environment that you're delivering this bold story choice. And for me, it didn't work. It was a complete and utter letdown. On multiple scales. One, again, because of the build-up. If you're going to have that much build-up, you got to have some payoff. We got nothing from Snoke. We're getting nothing from her parentage. All of these things that were built as these huge things are just falling flat. Go one or the other. Give us a very interesting Snoke, and we could probably buy the boring parentage. Give us a know-nothing Snoke. Give us a payoff for the parentage. The boom of those two moments, basically in the same scene, was a big letdown, especially considering everything basically else that happened in that whole sequence, especially the fight, was really cool. Just no payoff. I do also really liked how the Admiral went out. As soon as she started turning the ship, I'm like, oh my god, she's going to go to light speed through the ship. That's awesome. We've never seen that before. Really, really cool. I loved how it was visually presented. Quibble? She was already giving up her life. This was a suicide mission on her part. She was going to die. Why did she wait so long to do what she was going to do? I mean, seriously. It's obvious that the whole stealth part of the mission was blown. Ship after ship after ship was being destroyed. Do it earlier. That was my only real... I mean, just watching, I'm like, okay, once she did it, I'm like, oh my god, that's amazing. Maybe it took her that long to think about it. Could be. But I couldn't help but also think, man, if you'd only done it a little bit sooner, you'd actually have more surviving resistance fighters. Speaking of the resistance, gotta throw it out here too, talking about the grand scope of what's going on. Still don't know within the movies, maybe it was explained in the books, and I've been purposely avoiding the books because I want these movies to stand on their own. Love the idea of the expanded universe. I've enjoyed a number of the installments. I liked Rogue One Catalyst, a couple of the other books that have come out. But the films have to stand on their own. And the Resistance. Why is it called the Resistance if they were the Army of the Republic? I still don't know. It's still not been explained within the movies. I don't know. They're now really the Resistance because there's the Republic government has been kind of decimated. But how did the First Order get as big as it did? We need to know these things when we're jumping into a pre-existing world. I'm not going to rehash that anymore. Just going to say it. Let's move on. So we have the battle at Crate. We get the walkers. Okay, I'm going to throw it out here. Wasn't sure if I was going to do this, but I'm going to do it. Obviously, one of the big complaints about The Force Awakens is it's essentially a rehash of A New Hope. That is a problem. Most of my problems aren't actually about that. I have other problems with The Force Awakens, but this isn't a video about that. Obviously, people were concerned that this film was going to be a rehash of Empire Strikes Back. And I'm going to say up front, it's not. It is not a rehash of Empire Strikes Back. This goes in very different, bold directions. But let's take a step back and look at the basic idea of this film. We have rebels who are on a base that's being attacked by the bad guys and have to escape. And they do. And then spend the middle act of the film being pursued by those bad guys, while another character is being taught about the Force on an isolated world. And then they end up at a cloud city, and okay, see that's where it doesn't hold up anymore. But we do get a walker battle at the end instead of the beginning. And the overarching plot of this film, as far as the rebel side, the resistance side, is survival, which was the main plot of Empire Strikes Back. Survival. That was the goal, the conflict of that film. It was very isolated, very small. Basically, Han, Leia, Chewie, C-3PO attempting to survive and return to the rebellion to fight another day. That was the crux of that story. Here it is, the resistance trying to survive, to be the light that keeps the fight going. There really are a lot of similarities there. Goes in a completely unique way, but we can't completely deny the fact that there is a little bit of rehash here. But in any event, that's an aside. Moving on, we have the battle at Crate. They have the battering ram laser, and Finn goes to sacrifice himself to save his fellow resistance fighters. Great character moment. I mean, Finn is the one that wanted to flee and run away from the First Order in The Force Awakens. He wanted to run away again in this film to save Rey from what he considers certain death with the Resistance. And here he is sacrificing himself for the Resistance. I will say this film had me on the edge of my seat where I really wasn't 100% sure that characters were going to survive. It really did feel like anyone could die, and I will give the film all the credit for that, because these kind of movies, you sort of know, the main characters aren't going to die. I mean, it's sort of the cliche of Star Wars that the bad guys can't hit the side of a barn. They're going to be okay. This film, there was a sense of danger from start to finish. You did not know who was going to live and who was going to die. And for the most part, our named characters did survive. But this really felt like Finn was going to sacrifice himself, save his fellow resistance fighters, and then Rose saves him at the last second and gives him the line, We need to stop hating our enemy and start saving our friends. What? You just very selfishly got a lot of people killed, because I don't know if Finn's gambit was going to work, but let's say it did, and it stopped the battering ram. Probably people died when that battering ram hit the base. So because she has feelings for Finn, nearly got herself killed, probably got other people killed, so Finn would survive. Her friend would survive. It's kind of selfish. And although she was the cleanest of any of these, of the three of them, as far as the repercussions of their mutiny / stealing onto the super dreadnought, here she's now clumped right with them as people making selfish decisions that probably got other people killed. And I'm like, come on, really? Like Rogue One, we had great characters. We got to see Cassian kill an informant, talk about how they were assassins and saboteurs and everything else. That was characters making great decisions for a cause. This was characters making bad decisions for personal reasons. It, again, hurt Finn's character. It hurt especially Poe's character. He is not the hero in my eye. And maybe that's what they were going for. But it's like, he's not even a character I can truly root for right now. He is in a hole. He is in a moral hole, and he's going to have to dig himself out of. And I'm not sure he can. I'm not sure they're even bothered to try, because I don't get the impression that they felt the same way I did. But we'll just have to wait and see. Of course, Luke shows up. I did not guess that he was a hologram, even after all the lasers going down. Do have to say, I love the dynamic between Kylo Ren and Hux after Kylo's fight with Rey. Awesome. Again, going back to that real quick, that was awesome. Tearing the lightsaber in half. Did not know what was going to happen. I kind of, just watching the trailers, I had this I always figured it was far out possibility. But I kind of had the idea that maybe Kylo would turn good, and Rey would turn and go bad. Now, once Snoke was taken out of the picture, that really wasn't going to be a possibility. But I was thinking, if they were going to go for that bold, unexpected choice, that would have been it. That would have been cool. I don't know if they could have made it work. I don't even know if I would have liked it to work. But that was my little internal prediction that I didn't think was going to happen, but I thought there was a chance. But in any event, the whole dynamic between Hux and Kylo, after Kylo essentially becomes the new Supreme Leader, awesome. Love that during the whole battle. Luke, then of course it turns out that he was projecting himself, which was like, holy crap, Luke really is powerful. And then he dies. Did not like that he died. Obviously, I didn't like that Han died in The Force Awakens. But I mean, they kind of set it up where earlier in the film, Kylo had mentioned when he thought Rey was doing this projecting, he's like, that using that much force would kill you. Kind of set it up. They had the double sun, sort of the bookending his character. In a way, it works. I didn't like it. I could have gotten around it. My problem is with the death of Carrie Fisher. We know she is not going to be in Episode 9 in any meaningful fashion. So Luke was basically our last original character aside from Chewie. And not to diminish Chewie, but I mean, it was the core 3, core 4, and maybe they did have a vision. And he'll probably be a Force ghost. He'll probably have some appearance in Episode 9. But considering we're not going to have Leia, we've already lost Han, I wish they could have found a way to rewrite it to have Luke survive and be a part of that film. Because we're really not going to have that connection anymore. Obviously, their plan was not for Leia to have to be written out of the saga. Sadly, Carrie Fisher died. But I wish they could like taken a step back and go, you know, we need an original. Let's keep Luke. Obviously, that's not the route they went. We're just gonna have to wait for episode 9 to find out what happens. And I want to talk on this a little bit. As I mentioned, some of the problems I had with Luke's story was he was the reluctant hero, and talks about how, like, you know, it's not all about him being Luke Skywalker and blah 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 blah. And then ultimately, in the end, that is what it is. Luke shows up, rallies the troops. We see the kids at the end telling the story. The legend of Luke, and I don't know, it felt like they were going so far in one direction and then just 180'd at the end that no, the cult of personality is what we need in this situation. It did not feel cohesive to me. And also we have the kid, you see him kind of move the broom, he has force powers. So they could have done that to show that you didn't have to be a Skywalker and made Rey Han and Leia's lost daughter. I mean, I'd put all my money on that. I would have put money on that if I had a chance to bet on it. I would have put money that was the case. I thought it would have made their connection deeper and more personal when they ultimately have to fight once again in episode 9. You know, it could be that is where they end up going. J.J. Abrams has control of the films again with episode 9, so maybe he will retcon it where Kylo was lying. I don't know. It seems a little late at this point. But that is where we're at. As I said in my spoiler-free review, it just feels like, despite the fact that this film picks up immediately after the end of The Force Awakens, thematically it felt disconnected from the previous one. It feels like they really didn't have a plan for this trilogy. It doesn't feel like there's an overarching story. Now, Star Wars was a contained movie. Empire Strikes Back ends on a cliffhanger, but that story is contained. They have to rescue Han, obviously at the beginning of Return of the Jedi, but very little in the Return of the Jedi is a direct connection. There's a continuation of the story, but here, as I said earlier, so much of The Force Awakens was left unexplained or put off until this film. So there was a much more direct connection between the two, or there was expected to have, and these two films being married like that, this film doesn't feel like it knew it was supposed to be married to The Force Awakens as much as it was. And again, it doesn't feel cohesive. Like I said, the story of The Empire Strikes Back, other than that it's a continuation of the story, they're not. I mean, the story of Star Wars ended. The Death Star was destroyed. That was the story of Star Wars. Empire Strikes Back is the story of them escaping this base and surviving, and then Luke obviously going to Yoda. But even with those stories not being directly connected, there was a more thematic connection between the movies that I did not get with this one. So as I said with that one, I'm conflicted. I think overall this is a slightly better film than the Force Awakens, but it's also one that I don't have a driving desire to go see again. And that's the first time I've seen a Star Wars film that I could say that. Even The Force Awakens, which I did not like much from the very first viewing, I still want to go see it 2 more times in theaters. Rogue One, a film I love, I ended up seeing 5 times in the theaters. This one, I will probably eventually go see it. There's so many movies coming out over the holidays that finding time to do it is going to be difficult, especially when it's 2.5 hours long. But I don't have that desire, that driving need to go see it again at this point. So I've been talking way too long about this film. I don't know how long this review is going to be once I edit this down. But for now, I'm going to call it a close. Let me know what you thought about everything or anything I said about this film, good and bad. What were your favorite moments in the movie? What were the things that you liked the least? Where do you agree with where do you agree with me and where do you not? I really would like to know. Let's start a conversation down in the comments if at all possible. But for now, I'm going to call it a close because it's getting kind of late. I've been talking a long time. As always, you can subscribe to my channel. You can click the little bell button to get notifications of new videos. You can check out some other movie and TV reviews. And until next time, I'll see you at the movies.